Good morning. Welcome to our SCE demo for Domino. My name is Jim Coates. I'm a sales engineer here at Domino Data Lab, and I'm going to be doing the platform walkthrough today of Domino's SCE offering. I've got a couple people here with me, Ross Sharp, our solutions engineer, and Natalia Droba, who's another sales engineer who will be keeping an eye on the chat. If anyone has questions and you want to drop those in the chat section, I'm happy to take those live and we can go through any questions that you guys might have. I'll give everyone another minute to roll in before I get started here, and I'll share my screen so that when it's time to go, we'll be ready. So let's see here. Where is my screen share? I don't know if I'm not sure where the recording gets posted, but I believe that it does get shared. I will check with our technical team to make sure that they upload that someplace. Let's see here, screen. Here it is. And I will share this one. Perfect. Thank you for your question, Amit. All right, and everyone can see my screen okay. Hopefully I can see it here. So it looks like we're good to go. So as we get started here, I want to preface what you're going to see in today's walkthrough of the Domino platform. Now, the way that Domino does SCE changes the standards of SCE in a lot of ways because we leverage a lot of newer best-in-class tooling as part of our SCE. So while Domino is capable of moving your existing SCE workflow just to our new platform, to really get the best benefits out of Domino, we need to stay open minded about how it's going to affect our ways of working. So, the thought that I want everyone to have as I walk through the platform today is what parts, if any, of your current process could be improved or even possibly removed as a result of the new features that we're going to show today as part of the platform. And I want to take some time to set the stage as far as where in the clinical trial data flow that the Domino platform fits in. So, when we talk about clinical trial data flow, there's a couple of different stages, typically starting with collection. This is where your raw data is collected and sorted. Typically, then we see the data gets moved to a intermediary storage layer, something like an Azure Data Lake, a Databricks warehouse, Snowflake warehouse. Where Domino comes in is right after that intermediary storage solution. So Domino is where we're doing your SDTM dataset, your Atom dataset generation, generating those TFLs, and doing all that sort of manual coding work in a platform that is entirely auditable and traceable. And then afterward, obviously, that last step is going to be the long term storage solution where you're exporting all of those results out of Domino into a platform like a Viva Vault or something along those lines. So today, we're going to focus on this transformation and analysis piece of the clinical trials data flow inside Domino. Now, as part of my walkthrough today, what we're going to do is take the perspective of a couple of our key users inside of the Domino platform. So I'm going to show you how to use Domino from the perspective of a data manager, somebody who is responsible for the management of raw SDTM and Atom data. We'll then walk through how it works to manage a study from the perspective of a study lead, right? Somebody who's really responsible for that delivery aspect and the overall oversight of your study. And then lastly, we'll view things through the perspective of a project programmer, somebody who's doing the actual programming work or maybe even QC programming as part of the study delivery. Awesome. So let's get started with our data stewards. Now, when we talk about how we help this group inside Domino, our focus is on minimizing the burden of data management in order to accelerate the clinical development process. So typically, a lot of times, what we see with some of our customers is that there's a risk of data versioning miscommunication. So it's difficult to ensure that your downstream reporting effort teams are using the correct version of data. Additionally, central IT tends to be involved in the unblinding process, and this creates a cycle that can take sometimes days or even weeks to actually have a study become unblinded because of the requests that go back and forth. And lastly, a lot of times all of these activities are not well audited. So when an auditor comes, because it's always a question of when, not if, it becomes difficult to reproduce all of the events that led up to that point. So our goal is to deliver a repeatable and audited process around data versioning and to empower those data owners to actually own the data management process. So as I move through the platform, what you're going to see when we're all finished is a audit report of the various permission and access changes that have taken place to my data over the course of this part of the demo. And with that, let me pull up my data owner profile here, and I'll slide it over to the screen so that everybody can see it. Now, what you're actually seeing here is the email account for my data steward. Like a lot of you, I probably start my day inside of my email by checking my emails to see what happened. I want to get caught up. And what we'll see here is that I actually received an email notification from Domino telling me that my nightly run of my SDTM Atom or my SDTM data refresh has successfully accomplished. So coming in here, I'm going to follow the link, which is going to take me to the Domino job that actually did that data import. Now, you can think of a Domino job as any type of batch code execution that can either be run manually or scheduled. In this case, I have jobs scheduled, which are nightly going out, talking to my data source programmatically, and bringing in new data for my teams to work with. Now, you could imagine as part of this logic, it's also common that maybe there's some clean or comparison operations that are being run as part of this data import. And if I inspect any of these jobs, I get a complete list of everything that happened as a result. So I can see the code that was run as part of the job, the environment, which is going to be my collection of packages and software versions, which were installed and executed as part of this job. And I also get a list of the data that was changed as a result of that refresh. So when I'm talking about where this data actually lands inside of the Domino platform, it's going to be here inside of what we call a Domino data set. Now, these Domino data sets live at the heart of what's called our reproducibility engine. And the reason is, and you'll see here as I click into one, it's really just a file system under the hood. But what makes it so unique and so valuable is that I'm able to take a snapshot at any point in time. And I'll go ahead and just tag this one with today's date, August 8th, 2024. And you'll see here in just a couple of seconds, what it's going to do is freeze the state of this data set or of this file system so that at any point I can pass this to my downstream reporting effort teams, reference it by the tag, which in this case is today's date. And now I have the confidence and I'm able to ensure that my downstream reporting effort teams are only using the version of the data that I want them to be able to. So this is one of the ways that we're able to create a lot of confidence for our data owners that their downstream reporting effort teams are only using the versions of the data that they have reviewed and approved and exposed for those teams to use. Now, I touched on unblinding a little bit as well. Inside of the Domino platform, we've tried to simplify it as much as we can. So you'll see here I have my SDTM unblind data set. Now, like I mentioned, we can pass these data sets to our downstream reporting effort teams because they are mountable and shareable from within the platform. And when I want to unblind my study in this case, all I need to do is go into the permissions for my data set. I can search for my reporting effort team, which in this case is going to be my CDISC-01 reporting effort team. I want to make sure that they have read-only permissions to this data. So I'm going to add them as a reader. And once I save these permissions, I have now officially unblinded this data inside of the Domino platform. So what you'll notice is that this is probably a great simplification over maybe the process that you're using today. The reason that we're able to simplify it so much is because of the robust auditing capabilities that Domino provides that ensures that we're able to track who has access to the data at what point, and that ability has now allowed us to return the power of unblinding back to our data owners. So in terms of what that audit log actually looks like, I'm going to go into my settings here for my project, look at my access and sharing, and now I'm able to directly download that audit log. And if we take a look, we can open it up quickly. And what we'll see here, if I scroll down to the data set where changes occurred, is that I have a record of which permissions were changed when and who now has access to that data. This information is at my fingertips so that if for any reason I need to walk back in time or provide this information to an auditor, it's now very quick for me to have access to this information. And I, again, can operate as a data owner with confidence that anything that happens is now fully auditable and reproducible. So, what we just saw is how, through the use of the Domino platform, we're able to create that repeatable and auditable process around our data versioning. And because of those robust auditing capabilities, we're now able to empower our data owners to actually own the data management process. Now, with some of the customers I've worked with, we've been able to actually reduce the number of days it takes for them to unblind their studies from almost 2 weeks, 10 days, down to only two because of being able to remove those central IT processes that I talked about. And additionally, we're decreasing the delays from the use of inappropriate data via the use of those snapshots to allow us to guarantee that our downstream reporting effort teams are only using the versions of the data that our data owners have reviewed and approved. And like Ross mentioned, please, if anyone has questions, feel free to throw them in the chat. I'm happy to stop at any point and take those if you guys have them. All right. I see you have a question here, Amit. Reporting is part of Domino. If you don't mind, maybe you could expand on reporting for me a little bit. Are you talking in terms of outputs or maybe some of the reporting effort management activities, which are actually what I'm going to cover next? Or do you mean reports as in like those audit reports and logs and things like that? Because it could mean a couple of different things, but I'm happy to address it for you. I'll give you some time to type and I'm going to cover the study lead while we do. So the next person that I want to talk about inside of the Domino platform is going to be this study lead. So this is the person that's responsible for the oversight of your study delivery. So in terms of what we want them to be able to do inside of the Domino platform, we really want to centralize those reporting effort and team management activities. A lot of times what we see with our customers is that goals tend to be managed in an untracked software, right? Something like where you're managing your deliverables in an Excel spreadsheet and it doesn't provide any auditability. It can be difficult to enforce programming standards from a study lead's perspective, so they end up spending a lot of their time worrying about compliance rather than on the activities that are best driving delivery. And additionally, there tends to be minimal study visibility. So, if for some reason one of your programs fails or there's errors in an execution, your study leads get stuck spending a lot of time debugging and rerunning because of the related errors. So, our goal is to provide our study leads with a single pane of glass for audited project management. We want to enable them to create strong standards and be able to enforce those standards to reduce the risks of accidental errors in programming. And we want to provide them with an interface for quick study insight and adjustment. So, what you're going to see as I walk through the platform is our goals functionality, which enables us to easily have a central place to track and manage all of our deliverable activities inside of the Domino platform. I'll also show how to use Domino templates, which are going to enable us to create and enforce those standards that I talked about for our team. And lastly, I'll show Domino flows, which is going to enable us to have that really clear visualization of the progress of our study execution and enable us to gather quick insights about the efficiency as well as the success or failure of the study execution. So I will grab my study lead here on the sidebar. All right, let's see here. Just 1 second while I pull up my new screen. Thank you guys for your patience. Lots and lots of tabs open today. Perfect. Alrighty. And it looks like my screen's showing, so that's great now. So coming into the Domino platform, you're going to see here I have an overview of the various studies that I'm monitoring the progress of or in charge of as a study lead in Domino. So I want to come in and check on the progress of my CDISC O1 reporting effort. And the way that I'm going to do that is by navigating to the goals screen. So this is where I'm going to get that single pane of glass of all of the progress of my various deliverables and who may be working on them at any given point. I'm not only able to attach my outputs here, but I can also have conversations with some of my programmers. So I'm able to do something, say, like tag one of my production programmers and communicate with them that something needs to be worked on. In addition to having this nice single location to do our study management from, all of the activities that are happening inside of this Domino project or inside of our reporting effort, things like workspace and code execution, the various conversations that are going on, and deliverables that are being produced are all going to be captured here in my activity feed, which again just provides that extra layer of confidence to your study lead that they're going to be able to reproduce and validate any of the things that have happened over the course of the study work. And again, that's downloadable here in a PDF if for some reason you need to export it outside of the platform. Now, this works great for an existing study, but what about creating and enforcing those standards for our new studies? The way that we're going to do that is via a Domino template. So you'll see here, I have a list of predefined templates, which Domino provides to me for some of the common use cases that we support. Things like AI training flows, some of the sentiment analysis for the more AI heavy use cases inside the platform. But in this case, I want to focus on my SDTM and my reporting effort templates. If I click into a template, what you'll see here is that I'm able to predefine many of the pieces that are going to go into the creation of this reporting effort. I'm able to define my starting source code location so that my developers can have a stable code point to start their work from. I'm able to control which hardware tiers are available, which is going to define the compute resources that my team who is operating on this study has available. I'm also going to have access to control and restrict environments, which, like I mentioned, are going to be that collection of software packages and versions that my team has access to. My input data and my goals are also templated here as well, which means that if you have common deliverables across studies, you don't need to go through the boilerplate effort of reproducing or recreating those goals for every study. You can define them once inside of the template and then quickly be able to get up to speed with those goals for all your new projects. So you'll see here, I'll name my project quickly. I'll give it a CDISC 0005. Now, this is where we start to talk about code management inside of Domino. You'll see here, I have the ability to create a GitHub repository that is going to be connected with this reporting effort inside of Domino. We choose to use Git as our backing version control system because it truly is best in class currently for version control. Now, the reason that this is so beneficial for our study leads is because we're able to leverage all of the excellent new functionality that typically statistical programmers haven't really had access to. So as I create this here, let me do this first, and then I'll talk about some of the benefits that come along with a Git backed project. And you'll see here, I'm just going to provide my Git credentials, which is going to synchronize this with my upstream GitHub repository that's being created along with the project. And I'll click create here. So some of the additional benefits that we get along with having these projects backed by Git are things like version control. All of our commits and pushes are going to be fully audited by Git so that we can track the development of our code. And additionally, we're going to have the benefit of things like pull requests. So now we can have very fine grained access controls over who is promoting or pushing code to which branches. So think dev, val, prod, when. Now, as the project is created here, you'll see that I have some base activity inside of my project, as well as those goals that I talked about, which were all templatized. And switching over to my code tab, you can see here that all of my starter code is present, and this now has a one-to-one synchronization with my upstream Git repository so that everything that happens inside Domino is also tracked and synced inside Git. Like I mentioned, we're able to leverage things like branching so that we can accurately and reliably separate our various levels of code, things like dev, UAT, and production. Now, along the lines of standards, the other thing that came with my template here is a link to my standard macro repository. Now, this is a separate GitHub repository, which Domino has enabled me to mount as a read only repository to my existing project here for my reporting effort. And this is another way that we're now enabling teams to access the standard code that your organization has developed. So me as a programmer, I can now come into this project and have direct access to all of the standard macro functions that my organization has reviewed and approved without having to do any extra work to get them there. And the version of this code that is attached is clearly visible and traceable inside of the platform. So again, all of this is really designed to make access to the tools as consistent and easy as possible inside of the Domino platform. I see Ross is answering some questions for me in the chat. Thank you, Ross. I appreciate that. Now, the last thing that I'm going to move on to here is the Domino Flows functionality. This is one of the brand new features that we've added to Domino. And you'll see here, the Domino Flow enables me to have that clear visualization into all of the various parts that are going into one of my program runs. So if I zoom in a bit on my screen here, you can see the various programs that are executing. This is part of my TFL QC flow. So you could imagine if you're a QC programmer trying to run something, I can clearly see the dependencies between all my various programs and whether they have succeeded or failed so that it becomes very easy for me as a study lead to make adjustments to my study as needed. Additionally, I can get nice insights into the time that each one of these individual nodes or programs inside of my flow has taken to run. Because each of these is independently managed or independently has their own hardware tier, if I see for some reason that one of my programs is taking longer than it should, I can now quickly get a visualization of what's happening, go in, maybe increase my hardware tier. This is going to enable me to reduce the time it takes to execute that study. And I also have a lot of confidence as a study lead that I'm making efficient use of my resources because I have that fine grained level of control over hardware. So this is just another way that as a study lead or as a user of Domino, you're getting empowered to really have all the tools you need to successfully and efficiently execute a study inside of the platform. All right. So, what you just saw was how we're able to centralize those reporting effort and team management activities for our study lead. We're able to provide that single pane of glass for audited project management via our Domino goals and create and enforce strong standards via the use of Domino templates. You also saw how we can use Domino flows to get a really nice visualization of our study and gain insights into how it's actually executing. So, with all these features combined, we're now able to rapidly monitor and manage our study progress. We can reduce the worry as a study lead about whether or not our teams are being compliant because our projects are created in a compliant first manner. And we're able to save resources by getting those nice insights into how long each of those nodes is taking to execute and make adjustments as needed to guarantee efficiency. All right, I'm going to take a brief pause here in case anybody has questions, and then we can talk about how we support our programmers inside of Domino. All right. So the last group that I'm going to talk about here is how we support programmers inside of the Domino platform. So when it comes to programmers, what we really want to do is enable them to focus on what they do best, which is programming. So what we've seen a lot of times is that development efforts can tend to be disjointed, right? It's difficult to ensure that code is always running in the same way on everybody's machine. It's usually the case that there's no access to code management, and it's very difficult for programmers to get self-service access to the tooling that they need, resulting in long spin-up times to get a programmer onboarded and really contributing to your study. And lastly, results tracking can be burdensome. It gets difficult to track all of the various outputs that you're generating as part of your study execution. So, our goal for our programmers is to give them the access to best in class code management tooling. We also want to empower them to be able to get the tools they need in a self service manner so that we can eliminate any delays in our study. And we want to make it easy for them to track and manage the outputs from their various development efforts. So, what you're going to see as part of that is how we can use Domino workspaces to support multilingual projects and give our programmers access to self service tooling to get spun up as quick as possible. Oop, sorry, I scrolled the wrong direction. I'm also going to show how easy it is for them to share the results of their programming efforts via the use of Domino apps, which are a way for us to internally host things like our Shiny dashboards or any other applications to easily share results with your team. All right, so let me switch over to my programmer here. It'll be just a second while I pull up their profile. I see Ross and Natalia are both active in the chat, so I thank you guys for that. It's a big help for me. Let's see here. Be just a second while I refresh these workspaces. Alrighty. Just a sec. I apologize today, guys. We had a lot of storms roll through the East Coast last night, and it has not been kind to my internet provider. Perfect. I want to make sure that everything's in a good state for you guys. All right. And you should be able to see this right now. Oop, there we go. Perfect. All right. So again, similar to our study lead, what you're going to see here is that we're actually starting our walkthrough inside of our email. Like most users, this is where a lot of people are going to start their day. And you can see here that I actually received a comment on a goal that I'm a member of inside of Domino. So I'm going to follow this link so that I can view the comment inside of the context of Domino. And you'll see here, it takes me directly to my goals screen because that's our centralized place for all of this communication inside of the Domino platform. And if I view the comments here, I can see that my study lead asked me to check out my deliverable here. So I'm going to assign this to myself as the production programmer. And now I'm able to actually start doing my interactive development inside of the Domino platform. Now, that interactive development that I talked about is going to take place inside of a Domino workspace. Now, you can think of a workspace as your virtual laptop inside of the cloud where all of your interactive programming activities are going to happen. Like I mentioned here, I apologize, guys. My internet is struggling today, but it should pop up in just a second here. Perfect. So what you're going to see is that I actually have multiple of these running at the same time, which is going to enable that multilingual support that I talked about. And I just clicked my back button. But what you can see here is that I had Jupyter Lab, RStudio, VS Code, SAS Studio all running side by side. This is excellent if your organization may be, say, in transition from, maybe an older language base. Maybe you have some programmers that still want to use SAS, but you have some newer developers who are really excited about things like Python and R, and they maybe want to use Jupyter Lab or RStudio. They can now all work side by side inside of the same Domino project without being restricted by language or tooling. And if we look at what actually goes into one of these workspaces, you'll see here that as a programmer, I have a couple of different options. The first one is going to be my environment, which again is going to define the grouping of packages and software that I'm going to have access to as a developer. This is what really enables that self-service tooling because we're able to have an administrator or a study lead create these ahead of time. And now you're guaranteed to have your programmers only using the versions of code and software that your organization has approved. This is also one of the ways that Domino is able to support both GXP and non-GXP use cases inside of a single platform because we're able to create either GXP or non-GXP validated environments for programmers to use. Now, depending on which environment I select, it's also going to enable me to select different IDEs. Any of these IDEs that can really get executed inside of a Linux container are going to be supported in Domino, so the tooling is very flexible. And lastly, here you'll see that I have control over what hardware this virtual laptop is going to run. This is excellent because it allows us to support different workflows. If, say, you're just doing something like TFL generation, you may want to use a small hardware tier because it's just PDFs. Whereas maybe if you have some heavy duty bioinformatics, hopefully that's better for you guys. I say I heard my headset beep and I was hoping it didn't disconnect, but I think it disconnected for a second. You're good. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys. Thanks for the quick call out. So, like I was mentioning, SAS Studio here, you can see is just a pretty standard implementation of the IDE. But what's really nice about this is that it centralizes as a developer all of the tooling that I might need in order to. I see you're still typing, Sona. Can you guys hear me now in the chat? Is everything okay? I'll take that yes as a we're good to go. Oh, okay, I got a thumbs up. So we're good. Perfect. Thank you guys. I appreciate your patience. Perfect. So like I mentioned, oh yeah, of course, Ross, I'll go back just a tick here. So Ross asked me to go back to where I was talking about some of the bioinformatics stuff. So like Ross mentioned, our focus today is SCE, but because of the flexibility of both the hardware and the software that can be run inside of a workspace, it becomes very easy to support multiple different workflows inside of Domino. So, like I mentioned, we could say create both GXP and non GXP validated environments, which make it very easy to enable our production programmers to have self service access to tooling without the fear of worrying whether or not they're going to be using the correct validated versions of their software. And like Ross mentioned here, I also have flexible control over what hardware tiers are going to be available inside of my workspace. These can be restricted by an administrator if you don't want to allow everyone to have access to everything. But you could imagine if you're just doing, say, some light duty TFL output generation, you may only want to give your teams access to, say, a small or a medium hardware tier. Whereas if you're doing some heavy duty bioinformatics type work, you may want to give those teams access to some heavier GPUs. Both are fully available and supported inside of the Domino platform and have been made available in a way that is going to enable your teams to have self service access to that tooling. I was a tech lead for a long time. I used to manage a team of developers in a GXP environment. And I can tell you, it used to take me between 3 and 6 weeks to get my developers up to speed because it was very difficult to ensure that their software licenses were up to date, everything was installed correctly, the code was actually compiling on their machine. From the combination of hardware and environments that Domino provides, that was reduced incredibly for me, down to days, because it was so much simpler and it was only one account to worry about. So I love talking about workspaces because it's been a really great feature for me personally. So going back into our workspace, I want to show how a workspace ties all of the various tooling that we've talked about into one location. So you can see here I have pretty standard access to my SAS Studio instance, which I can make bigger or smaller if I'm doing some work. But in this case, what I want to show is that I also have access to my code management. So I'm able to directly pull, sync, commit all of my code changes without having to leave my workspace. Additionally, I have access to the Domino artifacts section of the platform where I'm able to register any of the outputs that I'm generating as part of my development work so that I'm guaranteed that I'm never losing track of the work that I'm doing or of any of the outputs that I'm generating. And you can see here that I also have direct access to that imported code repository, which contains my list of standard macros. So as a developer now, I have the ability to easily access all of the tooling I need, whether it's my standard code, whether it's my functions that my organization has approved, or if it is the actual code management that I need. I see here there's some questions as well about IDEs. We can run PyCharm inside of Domino. That is one that we support. I've seen currently a lot of people choosing to use something like a VS Code instead. It's become very popular for Python development, but we can support PyCharm as well. All right, so this is how we're doing our interactive development. What about when it's time to actually do a more production ready run of our study? Well, as a QC programmer, one of the key things that I care about is being able to have total lineage over the work that I'm doing and the outputs that it's related to. So I'm going to switch back over to the job screen, which is where we came back in as our data owner, if you guys remember. And you can see here, I have a list of jobs that I've successfully run in the last couple of days. So in this case, if I take a look at, say, one of my reports, again, jobs is tying together all of the various parts of the Domino platform that may have gone into the generation of our code or of our output. So I can see the command that I ran, the hardware tier that it was executed on, in this case, a small. I get a link to the collection of packages and software versions that were used as part of that execution. And I also have links to the artifacts that were generated, which are going to be the outputs that I talked about that our QC programmers especially really care about. So, in the vein of traceability, what I'm able to do now is select the job that has the link back to my code, back to my software versions, back to my hardware tiers. And I can now link this to the goal that I was originally working on when we came into the platform. So you'll see here, I can attach it to my ADSL dataset production. I'll link that here. And now if I go back to my goals, what you'll see here is a link back to the job, which is going to enable us to have that full reproducibility from the output that we're tracking all the way back to code software that executed and forward again as well. So from a QC perspective, it's now very easy to create that total lineage or traceability inside of the Domino platform. And the last part of this that I want to show is a Domino app, which is going to be the way that we are actually creating or sharing some of the other results that we might have inside of Domino. In this case, I'm going to step into my pooled AE reporting effort project. And just quickly, I want to talk about data. What we're going to see is that I actually have two data sets which contain Atom data from two other Domino projects, which have been brought in and mounted into my pooled AE reporting effort project. And now I'm running some code, which is actually combining these two data sets to create the pooled notion that we're talking about and enable me to clearly view and generate these results inside of my app. Now, this app is running and accessible inside of the Domino platform. We can see here that it's already running my GXP validated environment. So as a developer, I have a lot of confidence that, again, I'm operating inside of my organization's standards for GXP. And as I click into view my app here, what we'll see is that I now have an R Shiny dashboard that I can spin up and create. And we have a nice visualization of our adverse events reporting dashboard. This can be shared inside Domino, across teams, across users, and even externalized if that's a use case that your teams desire. So it's very flexible in terms of who has access or how restrictive that you would choose to make it. All right. So, like I talked about, the Domino functionality for programmers is really designed to enable programmers to focus on programming. We showed how we're able to give developers best in class or access to best in class code management via the use of Git and that connection to our workspaces. How Domino environments are enabling programmers to have self service access to the tooling that they need for rapid development, and how artifacts allow us to easily track and manage all of the outputs that come from our development efforts. So the value that this provides to the users is that we're now able to minimize the time for spin up and the time spent on activities that aren't programming. We can now rapidly develop while still knowing that we're automatically adhering to the standards that our organization has laid out. And we've now created a collaborative environment that makes it easy to review outputs and get feedback on them all from within, I should say, the Domino platform. So, in review, what we looked at today was how for data stewards, we can enable them to have complete data lineage and empower them to truly manage the data process inside of Domino, all backed by our complete system of record. We showed how for study leads, they're easily able to create and enforce standards for coding and delivery inside of the Domino platform, and how we're able to both centralize their management activities and give them clear visibility into both the performance and the execution of all of their study efforts. And lastly, for programmers, we showed how through the use of things like environments and workspaces, we're able to create consistency in their programming efforts, empower them to have self service access to their tooling for rapid delivery, and easily share and present the results of all of their programming efforts inside of the Domino platform. So that is the last of the topics that I wanted to cover today as part of our SCE demonstration. I really appreciate you guys being so engaged, asking some awesome questions in the chat. I know we still have a couple of minutes here, so if anybody has some lingering questions, I'm happy to hang out for a few minutes and answer those if they come up. Otherwise, I hope you guys have a great day, and thank you again so much for attending.
Jim, can you hear me now?
Yes.
I've been talking into the void. Oh, great. Amit's got a question, so I'll let you take that before I was going to say something.
Oh, of course. Where do we keep our TFL or PSUR reports? That's a great question. Let me pull the Domino back up for you quickly. Amit. Oops. I'll jump back into the platform. Typically, with some of the more static documents that you might have as part of your generation, and by static, I mean they're smaller, right? Smaller than maybe your SAS7 BDAT files or things like that. They're going to get stored inside of the Domino artifacts here. You can see again, this is very similar to data sets in that it's really just a file system under the hood. But what's so valuable about it is that we have access to that same sort of snapshotting functionality where I'm able to get a complete history or lineage of the various files that I might want to track and the states they were at any given time. And additionally, whoops, didn't mean to click there. And additionally, if I were to say want to review one of these or do something like say comment on one of my outputs, I can also do that here as well. So if I say take this PDF, for example, I can view it directly inside of Domino. I have a complete version history of all of the changes that may have happened to it. And if I want to comment on it or have some conversation about changes that might need to take place, all of that can happen inside of Domino artifacts. I hope that's helpful for you. Amit, I hope that answers your question. Awesome, great. And then Sona, I see you have one as well. We do not come pre-built with any GXP or non-GXP environments, so you guys would have to set those up. We have a partnership with a Taurus, and they're one of the many companies that can help with package validation, but we tend to put that back on our customers because we want to keep it flexible and make sure that we're supporting whatever packages they might want to use.
Yeah, just to add to that, the actual validation of the software that your users would use would happen. Our customers do that. However, Domino, we can advise and help implement the particular like workflows and standard operating procedures on how to take that validated software, how to get it into Domino compute environments, how to control access to make sure that only, for example, those GXP environments are used in GXP context projects. So we can help with the kind of process stuff around using GXP and Domino, but not the actual validation of the software. And as Jim said, for things like the typical thing, right, that we're seeing is that people are now using R, open source R in the GXP context. And so the two paths really are that our customers can kind of validate specific R packages themselves, or we have a partner, as Jim mentioned, called a Taurus, who actually have they sell essentially an R image, which an R Docker image, which contains pre-validated R software, and we integrate that into Domino as well. Jim, there's another question there from Amit.
How do we build the Atom data sets using the study? Or I'm not sure what INN is. That's one I'm not familiar with. But because Domino's a code first platform, really what we're doing is providing you a framework to have access to all of the tooling that you need and execute the code that you might already be running to generate those Atom data sets. So while Domino's not say necessarily providing any code or any functionality that's doing the Atom generation for you, we're enabling you to work in a collaborative, auditable, traceable way and with the efficiency of things like jobs and workspaces, et cetera. So I say all that, Amit, to really say it's up to you. However, your team maybe is currently doing or wants to do their Atom data set generation in the future, we'll support it inside Domino.
And then just to tie that, I know there's a question from Sona earlier around wanting to see the AI use case, the sentiment analysis and Llama and things like that in Domino. So just kind of building upon what Jim said there, Domino is a general purpose analytics platform. It is a platform which executes any code on any data from any language in a fully traceable and reproducible way. So today we showed you how you can use all this kind of large spectrum of Domino features to execute an SCE use case in a GXP compliant manner. But we have many, many customers who use Domino as a data science platform to build like their AI models, for example. And so it allows you to have that in a single place, right? Because we do not have like an build Atom dataset button. It is using code to build that Atom however you want to. That code could also train a model, right? And we can also like host like an LLM, for example. There's many different use cases you can do on Domino.
Yeah, great questions, guys. We appreciate the engagement. I'm certainly happy to answer them. If you have any more, drop them in. We still have about 13 minutes left here, so I'm happy to take them if you have them. Cost matrix per user. That's a good question. I don't have access to that information, but I'm happy to have somebody follow up with you around licensing and user costs and things like that. If you think you're interested in it, we can certainly get that over to you.
Yeah, Amit, is that what you meant in terms of the Domino licensing cost, or do you mean around the compute costs of users inside of Domino and tracking that?
It's a good question, Ross. Actually, thank you. Yeah.
Both. Okay. Jim can, yeah, we can follow up about the actual kind of licensing cost. It's very simple though. The way that Domino is licensed is on a per user basis, and it is what we call the kind of coder user, anyone who's like writing and executing code. That is a paid license in Domino. We also have unlimited free licenses for a persona, which we call the results consumer. So that is anyone who is basically not writing and executing code, and they're consuming assets built by coders. So for example, in the SCE use case, you might have medical writers who just want to view the TFL outputs and comment and give their opinion on how the underlying code that produced that output needs to be changed. They would be a free user because they're not actually writing and executing code. They're just viewing the outputs inside of Domino and giving their 2 cents on them. But we can follow up in a lot more detail around the pricing separately, Amit. And then Jim can talk about maybe the actual kind of cost controls that you can do inside of the platform and showing compute costs and things.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you, Russ. That's a great first half. And then, Amit, just for your sake as well, I wanted to show this, which is kind of a behind the scenes look. This is what an administrator would see in Domino, which is not kind of part of our SCE workflow, but it's more part of the general Domino tooling. So we can get a lot of great insights into the workspace usage, which is what's actually consuming those hardware tiers, as well as for some of our different supporting data models. And that's all captured and customizable inside of the admin panel, along with some estimates for how much we think those various things are going to cost based on your current usage. Um, so that's really kind of the beginning of how we can sort of start to shape the conversation around monitoring and control of that resource usage inside of Domino. Do we have any free usage for the students? I don't know that we have any licensing specific to students. Like Ross mentioned, if there's someone who's kind of just going to be consuming those results, we do have free licensing for that. In terms of sort of deals or benefits for a student-based organization, that's one that I would happy to pass along, and we can get in touch if you want to do a follow-up, Sana.
Yeah, Sona, someone will be reaching out to you shortly, and we can discuss all this with you there.
Great. Any other questions, guys? Yep, Sana, happy to follow up. All right. If there's no other questions, let's see, at U Michigan. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. University of Michigan for usage quota. I see. Good to know. Yeah, we'll have to continue that conversation, Sona, for sure. All right. If there's no other questions coming in, guys, I'm going to jump off stage. Again, I appreciate all the engagement. I love to see the questions, and we're always happy to answer them. There'll be some follow-ups as well. So if you guys want to independently schedule follow-up demos or things like that, we're happy to support those. You're very welcome, and I hope you guys have a great day.